Alright, so that video with Obama, he answers some of the questions that we as Americans have about a possible attack in Syria. We wonder, are we making the same mistake we did in Iraq? Are we getting ourselves caught up in another war? Are we endangering our troops and loved ones? And Obama says no, that this is going to be a small military attack, that Syria poses no threat to our national security, but there's some arguments against that. Secretary of State John Kerry, who works under Obama, had to assure members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that this is not sending a message per se, implying that the strikes would be more substantial. Like I said, Obama, when he was answering those questions, said that it would be just a limited, pinpoint military attack, and this doesn't exactly agree with that. Republicans like John McCain have indicated that they have also been given more detailed assurances of a more intense intervention, which makes you wonder if Obama is telling us the truth. Is it possible that a striking of Assad won't even end the conflict too, but may drag us into another civil war like Iraq? Those are things you gotta wonder. U.S. goals of military action. The administration says a reason for military action is simply to reinforce a global norm against the use of chemical weapons. And you heard Obama say that in his thing right there, is that our main reason is to keep Assad from using nuclear weapons. But is that really a good goal and a reason to go in there? If the Syrian civil war is to continue, Assad to gain the upper hand and tens of thousands more to die, but without the further use of chemical weapons, would the administration really say mission accomplished? By that meaning, if all these people keep dying at the hands of Assad, I mean, even if we get rid of the use of chemical weapons, these people continue to die. Is it really a mission accomplished if innocent people continue to die? If we were to exceed in ousting Assad, it would be implicated in the next phase of this war, which would almost certainly lead to chaos and the slaughter of ethnic cleansing of the Al-Wate sect to which Assad belongs, and perhaps of other minorities, as happened in Iraq. So, like, who knows if we go in there and try to do something, what we might provoke and what we might start. And Obama, I feel, fails to mention and talk about that part in his speech. There's another issue about us going into Syria, and it's the lack of support. U.S. military leaders and many members of Congress, Republican and Democratic alike, were expressing serious reservations of actual opposition. Press reports even cited leaks by unnamed officials who characterized the intelligence linking Assad to chemical attacks as no slam dunk, a painful reminder of how bogus information had paved the way for the disastrous and unnecessary Iraq war. Jordan's king, Abdullah, who's supposed to be America's closest ally in the Arab world, publicly announced that he favored talking to Syria rather than bombing it, taking the more peaceful approach, and instead of possibly provoking something that could lead to more violence and even more deaths, even more of our own deaths. British Parliament rejected Prime Minister David Cameron's attempt to position the United Kingdom alongside the United States. Parliament's vote dashed Obama's hopes of forging a coalition of two, and so investing in a war of choice against Syria with at least a modicum of legitimacy. When it comes to actual military action, only France still entertains the possibility of making common cause with the United States. So basically, if we're going to go into Syria, we are alone, which again, we have a target on our backs, which I believe endangers us even more and threatens our national security even more. Oh. Well. Alright, so I got another video for you guys here. And this is basically, it's hitting some of the same exact points, but going into them a little deeper. that I've talked about?
Well, listen, we heard the same arguments during the Vietnam War. What the president's referring to is some kind of bizarre variant on the domino theory. We can call it the bomino theory these days. If we just bomb enough countries, then other countries won't do anything bad. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. And this particular attack is more likely to do something bad than something good. It's not going to depose the dictator. It's not going to change the government. It's not going to end the civil war. It won't even prevent the Syrian military from using poison gas in the future. People scratch their heads and say, what's the point? And when you think about all the different ways this can go awry, including leading to a regional war or another war involving U.S. troops, it's simply not worth it.
So how did we get here? I mean, what's your understanding of the rationale? When did, for example, when did the United States become the policeman for the world?
Well, I think a lot of people feel otherwise. A lot of people feel that the United States should not be the policeman for the world, should not be the judge, the jury, and the executioner for the world. The proper course of conduct here would be to take this matter before international bodies. The reason why the Obama administration is reluctant to do that is because it knows that it will lose. It will lose its argument at the United Nations, it will lose its argument at NATO, it will lose its argument for the Arab League, and therefore it's leading us to the very vulnerable position of acting alone, which is clearly a violation of the UN Charter. There's no authorization in international law for the United States to simply go off and bomb someone just because we think they've done something wrong. And the people just don't want it. I mean, now I've heard from both Democrats and Republicans that the emails and phone calls and letters that are coming into their offices are running more than 100 to 1 against military attacks, against military intervention. The only people who really want this are the military-industrial complex and the warmongers. And I think they're both heading for defeat.
One of the groups you didn't mention.
All right. So, in that video there, like I said, he hits on a lot of the points that I already talked about. He talks about the whole goal situation and what is really there really is no clear objective to what we're trying to do necessarily. And he also talks about how we stand alone on this issue. That if we are to go in to Syria, that we really have no support and we are doing it alone. And he also goes into the national security and talks about how there's a lot of signs that show this could be a repeat in history of exactly what happened in Iraq. So he, like I said, he reiterates a lot of the points that I made. And then there's the issue of possible cost. Our economy as it is isn't in the best situation, and we have a lot of problems to fix here. And I think it's important to know how much more money we'd be spending if we were to go into Syria. Wars with Iraq and Afghanistan cost more than $4 trillion, according to a study at Harvard's Kennedy School. So that was the Iraq war. That went a lot longer than hopefully this will go, and hopefully this won't happen at all. But here's some little costings of how much it'll cost if we were to do some sort of strike in Syria. Before the missile strike on Syria became an issue, the Navy's USS Nimitz and its escorts were scheduled to return from deployment. Now, however, they've been ordered to remain within striking distance of Syria, which alone cost an estimated $25 million per week. Each Tomahawk cruise missile likely to be fired on Syria cost an estimated $1.5 million each to replace. If the U.S. fires missiles, that'll add an additional $30 million per week for as long as the Navy's Nimitz and Truman are engaged in combat. So this again just talks about war is not cheap. We have a lot of problems in our own country where we're struggling for money. Our economy is not in the best state. What will this do? Will this put us even in a bigger hole than we already are? You gotta ask before we try to go help other people, are we in the right position ourselves to be able to go do that? Alright, I have another video, last video. This is a representative from Nebraska named Jeff Fortenberry. And he give some good perspective on the whole Syria situation.
Then I will yield
Like
to
you
my
did.
friend from Nebraska.
Well, thank the gentleman from Texas. I hate to disturb your train of thought, but if you would allow me for about 3 minutes of commentary, I want to make...
I yield such time as Mr. Forkbear may use.
Thank you.
Take all you need.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to add to Mr. Gomer's conversation today, I wanted to add a few words on the Syrian conflict, which has been unfolding with just horrific consequences. In my office this week, I read the accounts about Father Francois Moran, a Franciscan priest who was shot dead in northern Syria by rebels engaged in this Syrian conflict. He was killed in a Christian village where he sought to serve. He did not deserve the death that he was dealt. Mr. Speaker, I just simply firmly believe that the United States Congress cannot allow American taxpayers to become complicit in this killing and the other brutality that is occurring there in Syria. What began as a very hopeful exercise of the Syrian people petitioning their government for redress of grievances and their basic rights has spun into a dreadful civil war with terroristic elements and other rebel groups fighting this brutal Assad regime. But the bloodbath in Syria has spared no one. The regime and many of its rebel opponents have killed wantonly, without discretion, murdering civilians and combatants alike, though not men, not women, or even innocent children have been spared, and no one there is safe. Now, we have no place imposing our notions of democracy in a place where we cannot distinguish who stages American attacks on civilians. We have no business shipping weapons that could end up in the hands of those who would raid convents and murder innocent people. Neither America nor Syria can possibly be served by this. Now, Mr. Speaker, true to our principles, the United States remains the largest donor of humanitarian assistance to the people of Syria, with a total of more than $800 million given since this conflict began in the spring of 2011. And that's where our efforts belong. Mr. Speaker, I think Father Moran, who I referenced earlier, that would probably be the outcome that he would want to see. Humanitarian help, giving people some hope, possibly even stopping the shipment of arms into that country. That would be a legacy worthy of his sacrifice. 100,000 persons have died, Mr. Speaker. No U.S. military engagement in Syria. Thank the gentleman from Texas for yielding.
Alright, so from that video, that again reiterates us going into the United States going into Syria can only probably provoke things. Like, what are we actually going to be able to accomplish if we do go in there? There's so much chaos and stuff going on. How much of it can we actually really fix? And what kind of position are we to go in and try to help someone when we're in the condition that we are? But he does have a great point that I agree with him 100%, and that is that there still needs to be something done. We can't just sit here and watch. What's happening in Syria is still definitely a problem, and they need help. But instead of attacking the country and possibly getting us involved in a civil war and possibly making things worse there, we should look to give them aid and donate. Many refugee camps lack resources to properly care for refugees, especially children. We need to give them as much as we can. We should send food, money, medicine instead of provoking more violence, because that's what they really need in the end of the day. From the Christian perspective, in Matthew 10:28, it says, God will take care of us and is fully capable of handling those who do evil. We should not fear people, even those who could kill us. So in this situation, God really calls us to trust Him and trust that He will take care of people that do wrong. The whole situation in Syria is very unfortunate, and I think we can do things to help. But I don't think we could get ourselves involved by going in and doing a military strike. As Christians, we got to trust God that He knows what He's doing and that He will take care of the situation and take care of the innocent. Thank you very much.